GZ, I have a confession to make. You were right. You were right all along. I was the one who helped partake in the murder. Why? Well, I did it for the money and the woman. And I didn't get the money, and I didn't get the woman. You can't kill them. Welcome! I am the Kaiju no Kami, and tonight I am kicking off a brand new review series that has nothing to do with Kaiju. This time it's going to be on film noirs. And to kick that off, let's start with Double Indemnity. While film noir features a lot of detective and crime-ridden stories, noir is actually a style of filmmaking as opposed to a genre. Therefore, movies from any genre can encompass this, be it a horror movie like Night of the Hunter to even science fiction thrillers like Dark City and Blade Runner. It is all about the stylistic choices the filmmakers choose to use when making their movie. Noir is French for black, so a lot of these movies put a heavy emphasis on telling parts of a story through the use of lighting and shadow. There are a lot of similarities found throughout each movie in this style, be it a deadly female character commonly known as a femme fatale, oddly placed camera angles, close-ups on facial expressions, and an imbalanced composition of imagery. In fact, you can find out a lot of what defines film noir on this website link below. Historically speaking, the film noir style officially kicked off with the 1941 adaptation of The Maltese Falcon, and it ran for 18 years when the style was said to have technically ended with the completion of Orson Welles' 1958 masterpiece Touch of Evil. This doesn't mean every movie ever made before 1941 can't be considered a film noir, as Fritz Lang's 1931 classic M is definitely a noir, while the 1962 films The Manchurian Candidate and Cape Fear are also considered to be some. Double Indemnity is considered by many, including myself, to be the greatest film noir ever created. It incorporates every element to the noir style and ends up being one of the greatest movies of all time. The movie was adapted from James M. Cain's novel by director Billy Wilder. Unfortunately, the movie was nominated for 7 Academy Awards and lost every one of them to a musical comedy named Going My Way. Clearly though, that year nothing was going Wilder's way, which is a shame because Double Indemnity is still being talked about today, whereas Going My Way has pretty much been forgotten. Double Indemnity kicks off with Fred Murray's portrayal of insurance salesman Walter Neff, walking into his office very late at night to record a confession of events that led to a murder he helped commit.
Accident and Double Indemnity. You were pretty good in there for a while, Keys. You said it was murder. Check. Killed him for money, for a woman. And I didn't get the money and I didn't get the woman.
The story flashes back to the day Walter first arrived at the home of a man named Dietrichson, as Walter wants to see if the man is interested in renewing his car insurance with them. There, he meets Dietrichson's wife, Phyllis, played by Barbara Stanwyck. They have a quick flirt session full of snappy dialogue and wit before Walter heads back to his office.
There's a speed limit in this state, Mr. Neff. 45 miles an hour.
How fast was I going, officer?
I'd say around 90.
Suppose you get down off your motorcycle and give me a ticket.
Suppose I let you off with a warning this time.
Suppose it doesn't take.
Suppose I have to whack you over the knuckles.
Suppose I bust out crying and put my head in your shoulder.
Suppose you try putting it on my husband's shoulder.
From there, we are introduced to Walter's boss, Barton Keyes, played by the amazing Edward G. Robinson. Keyes is discussing a man's insurance claim when he reveals that he has stomach issues every time someone turns in a fraudulent claim.
Every month, hundreds of claims come to this desk. Some of them are phonies, and I know which ones. How do I know? Because my little man tells me.
And gets the man to confess his sins.
Now you're an honest man again. Goodbye, Guy Lopez. Come on, Guy Lopez. Don't you know how to open the door? Just put your hand on the knob. Turn it to the left. Now pull it toward you. That's the boy.
Thank you, Mr. Keyes.
From here, Walter receives a call to return to the Dietrichson residence and in doing so, meets Phyllis in an empty house so she can discuss her husband's insurance.
I was thinking about my husband. I worry a lot about him down in those oil fields. It's very dangerous. Don't you think he ought to have accident insurance?
Mm-hmm.
Accidental insurance. Sure, that's not the least bit suspicious, now is it?
Could I get an accident policy for him without bothering him at all?
You mean you want him to have the policy without him knowing it?
Is there anything wrong with it?
Then if some dark, wet night that crown block did fall on him. Of course, it doesn't have to be a crown block. It can be a car backing over and we could fall out of the upstairs window. Any little thing like that, just so it's a morgue job.
Walter refuses to help and storms off. That night, Phyllis comes to his apartment and they start to plot up something devious. But not before Walter has this to say.
I'm crazy about you, baby.
How can you already be madly in love with her? You met her like 2 days ago.
You can if it's true love.
After symbolically making out, Walter thinks up a perfect idea to pull the plot off and the gears are set into motion.
They're not going to hang you because you're going to do it and I'm going to help you. We're going to do it and we're going to do it right. And I'm the guy that knows how. There's not going to be any slip-up. This is going to be perfect, you understand? Straight down the line.
Walter tricks the poor man into signing up for the accidental insurance without his knowledge. Walter has a nice train of thought to get rid of Diedrichson, but the idea is derailed when the old man breaks his leg.
He had a fall down at the well, broke his leg. It's in a cast.
Broke his leg.
What do we do now, Walter?
We just wait
Wait for what?
until he can take the train. I told you it's got to be the train.
There are other ways.
We're not going to do it other ways.
Get it? Train of thought and derailed because he's going on a train and he's going to fake his murder that way. And yeah. I'll shut up now. Unfortunately for Walter, Phyllis manages to convince her husband to go on his planned trip to Stanford after all. So the murder plot commences.
I wanted my movements accounted for up to the last possible moment. I changed into a navy blue suit like Diedrichson was going to wear. Next, I stuck a card inside the telephone box so that it would fall down if the bell rang. Then I did the same thing to the doorbell in case anybody came to see me. I got into the back of the car.
Really? That's how you're gonna hide in this car, is by scrunching yourself down to the bottom of the back seat? What if Diedrichson wants to lay back at all? Or isn't he gonna find the back of his seat a little bit hard? Were cars back then bigger on the inside?
What are you honking the horn for?
Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth.
Anyway, Walter impersonates Diedrichson when he gets onto the train and makes his way for the last car where a strange man is sitting. The man tries to talk to him, but Walter keeps his back to him and his face hidden and gets the guy to go away with enough time for him to disembark the train without anyone knowing it. He and Phyllis dump Diedrichson's body onto the tracks and quickly drive off. Well, kind of.
All right, let's go.
I give this murder plot an E for epic failure. Walter and Keyes are being scolded by the company's owner, who believes Diedrichson had actually committed suicide. We are then treated to a nice comeback from Keyes.
You know, you ought to take a look at the statistics on suicide sometime. Why, we've got 10 volumes on suicide alone. Suicide by race, by color, by occupation, by sex, by seasons of the year, by time of day. Suicide, how committed? By poisons, by firearms, by drowning, by leak. Suicide by poison, subdivided by types of poison, such as corrosive, irritant, systemic, gaseous, narcotic, alkaloid, protein, and so forth. Suicide by leap.
Make it stop.
Subdivided by leaps from high places, under the wheels of trains, under the wheels of trucks, under the feet of horses, from steamboats. Of all the cases on record, there's not one single case of suicide by leap from the rear end of a moving train.
Keyes denies the whole thing is being made up, at least initially, until he shows up at Walter's door that night to tell him he's got a feeling that the whole thing was an act.
The guy had a broken leg. He had accident insurance, didn't he? Why didn't he put in a claim? Maybe he just didn't know that he was insured. No, that couldn't be it. You delivered the policy to him personally, didn't you?
Yep, Keyes pretty much figures it all out, and his decision is reinforced when the man from the train, Jackson, reveals that he never met Dietrichson, but instead a gentleman that was 15 or so years younger.
That guy Dietrichson was never on the train.
I mean, this is not the man that was on the train.
Walter meets up with Phyllis to report the detrimento news, which she takes as nothing more than an idle threat from him.
We went into this together and we're coming out at the end together. It's straight down the line for both of us.
It doesn't stop her from suing the insurance company, which ultimately causes Walter to take matters into his own hands and phones Phyllis to schedule a time to meet with her. That night he confronts her and their fates are sealed.
Goodbye, baby.
Thus bringing an end to one of the finest pieces to ever grace cinema. What can I really say? Double Indemnity is just one of those movies that is nearly perfect. Everything hits the right stride as everything is made with such precision. The plot is an interesting one as it deals with an insurance salesman rather than a detective or some type of criminal mastermind who thinks he knows the fine print to every detail that would allow him to get away with the murderous scheme. This is added on top with such fantastic performances from the entire cast, especially our trio of main characters. Walter never wanted anything more than to do his job and gets roped into being manipulated by a conniving little blonde devil, and it is his faults that make him a compelling character to watch. Murray's performance flawlessly pulls off a man who is fighting with himself over what is exactly right and wrong, but is still willing to go down into that rabbit hole for a woman. Phyllis is also intriguing to watch because you can clearly tell she is playing everyone, but her evil side is what makes everything work. She wants everything for herself, but plays the good little housewife to get it, and it almost works. Stanwyck does an outstanding job of bringing to life one of the most devious femme fatales to grace the style. Finally, we have Barton Keyes, who is probably the highlight of the movie. Every little bit of dialogue from him is snappy, full of wit, and spoken with such finesse that makes him perfect for the insurance prospect. This man is sharp and intelligent beyond recognition, and it is seeing him be right on the mark, but blindly denying it because of his friendship that makes everything he does gut-wrenching. Keyes is a character lost to time, as movies today don't seem capable of ever writing a character this clever anymore. When talking about film noir, one must talk about the cinematography, and it is utterly exceptional in this film. There is a lot of heavy use on shadows and lighting to make it look absolutely breathtaking. The scene when Walter is in his apartment with the lights off and the rain pouring down is incredible, as is the lighting over Phyllis's face when her husband is being killed. It truly highlights how sadistic she is. The filmmakers made sure that every little detail was beautifully shot and that the end result was worth it. Miklos Rosa scored this film, and even his score fits perfectly into every scene. Now, I would be lying though if I were to say this was one of the most memorable film scores ever, as it isn't. It is a more subdued one. However, it does exactly what it needs to do by effectively adding to each scene. Overall, Double Indemnity exceeds all expectations of filmmaking. It has a perfect balance of humor and drama, and it knows when it needs to have one over the other, which is not something you see very often anymore in movies. If you have never seen this movie at all before, you need to run the store and buy it on Blu-ray right now because it is that good. With that said, I must bring this review to a close. Until next time, bye. allow him to get away with the murderous scheme.